Okay. Chair votes yes. Mike,
Yes, sir.
Sandy,
Yes.
minutes are adopted. Do we have anyone here this evening, more smaller intimate group I see, that would like to make public comment on anything not on the agenda? And currently on the agenda, we have the rezoning request. That's really the official item on the agenda. Anything outside of that anyone wants to make comment on? Going once, going twice. Sold. All right, we will close public comment. Unfinished business, we do not have any this evening. We have new business before us. We have a public hearing on a rezoning request from ag to low density residential for 20 acres on 5601 Conway Road. Our applicant Patrick is here with us. We will have him give a brief overview of his reasoning in wanting this rezoning change or zoning change. And then we'll open up a public hearing and then we'll have member discussions and action. Just as a reminder to everyone, the process for rezoning request, we should all be old hats at this by now because it's been a few this year. But the planning commission holds a public hearing like this and comes up with its recommendations that it then sends to the township board, who then takes official action on the rezoning of said property. I do, before I start, want to acknowledge I got a letter from Karen Willems that was emailed to me in support of this rezoning request. Dawn, I will forward that to you. It came in this afternoon.
And may I also just double check with Rod that he will help me with the attendance list, please?
I am doing so right now.
Thank you,
Yeah, we
sir.
got a few adding on as we go, so any help keeping track would be great. All right, Patrick, I am going to hand it over to you. If you could give us a 5-minute where you at. You've been before us before on OSBDO and other things, but specific to this rezoning request, sort of your reasoning behind it and your logic for it.
Mr. Chairman, if I might interrupt, my name is Ellis Friedman. I'm an attorney in Washtenaw County, represent Patrick, and I just want to add something to the mix here.
Sure.
I had a long conversation with the township attorney that's been retained in with this regard, Mr. Thal. We had a nice, productive conversation this afternoon about this whole process and where Patrick is and where he wants to be and so on. And Mr. Thal and I came to the conclusion that it might be a smart idea for Patrick to table this or ask you to table this request for a month. We are working on some other options, and Mr. Thal has some additional input that he'd like to make from a planner, and he was of the opinion that we'd all be best served if we tabled this for 1 month. I've talked to Patrick about that. He is in agreement, and we would like to move in that direction.
Sure. If the applicant agrees, we can entertain that, but definitely, Patrick, any color you can give to it would help.
Yeah, I'd like to give a little bit of background. This is something that we really struggle with, and we've been struggling with this in terms of my project on Conway Road, my proposed project, for 2.5, I think nearly 3 years since we actually gave the first presentation on it. Because what we're trying to do is kind of unique, right? We're trying to balance residential and agricultural together within a single development. It's not done that often. We could cite some other examples. There are some out there, of course, but we struggle with the zoning on this, right? Agricultural zoning is geared toward agriculture and individual homes on the lot, right? And low density residential is geared toward, well, a lower density, but perhaps greater density than agricultural, which would allow the kind of which would almost allow the kind of clustering that we want, but it's not really geared toward agricultural use, although we have the Right to Farm Act that still protects the agricultural use in some sense. So it's not clearly either one or the other. And I think if you look through the master plan, and I think that the Carol did an excellent job citing different sections of the master plan that might be applicable either to the rezoning request or to the project, which is, right behind it. We see that kind of tension, right? We see on there that preservation of open space is a higher priority for the township. We see that that we would prefer to focus development in the areas that have public utilities too, right? So how do you get both at the same time? We see on the future land use map, we see that there's a lot of areas that are slated for low density residential future land use. And then we dig deeper into that and we see that there's actually 2 compatible zoning districts for it, right? But not both at the same time. They're just both out there. And I don't know how many people in this meeting can remember why there are 2 zoning districts marked as compatible for low density residential. You can go back in the minutes and you can see it from late 16 or early 17. Originally, the original draft had only low density residential zoning district as being compatible. And I raised my hand and said, well, it seems like, ag should be compatible too, because it should be okay to continue with agriculture. And I always saw these things as coexisting. That was before we really got this project off the ground even. I even knew what it was going to be. So I've always been thinking this way. I don't know if that gives you a clear answer. I wish I could ask for a rezoning that is a mix of residential and agriculture. And I think that's what I've been trying to do with the open space ordinance, thinking that we could have it both ways by following the spirit of the open space ordinance in an effective way of clustering homes on a smaller portion of the property and having that coexist with a larger portion, which is a farm in perpetuity, which is still, that still seems to be the best way to navigate through our ordinance structure. And I am happy to see that the open space ordinance has gotten some renewed attention and has been sent out to a planner for review. It may very well be that ends up in a satisfactory way that actually works for us and perhaps across the township can be beneficial too, which I do certainly care about. And this gets into what Mr. Friedman was saying about tabling this or delaying it for a while. Since there are things in motion on the open space side that were not in motion when I submitted the application, right? It might be better to hold off for a little bit if that was mutually agreed to by the Planning Commission and by me. And I would also say furthermore that if we do want to go forward with the rezoning application, because for some reason, let's say the open space ordinance still is not satisfactory to meet our needs, we might want to explore a conditional rezoning, which would be conditional on some of the same things that we wanted in the open space ordinance, such as an assurance to the township that we will preserve at least 50% of the land, right? That could be put as a condition. So we know that I'm not just doing this so I can scatter homes all over the property. So that's something else that we would consider. So I guess that's where it stands right now. I don't know if you guys would entertain a delay, but I certainly would.
Yeah, thank you. That does help, Patrick, and it helps to bring us back to present moment because this has been a while and a lot of different things. I thought, just speaking for myself, and I'll let other members sort of talk too. I think your reasoning is spot on. I mean, I think the struggle here is that you have a piece of property that's clearly an ag property that you clearly are doing agricultural work on that you want to continue on, and then you have a residential idea for it that's also part of an ag community. And I think our ordinances don't think about that, right? I mean, it's either you're gonna have 10 acres in a farm, 10 acres in a house. You're gonna have 1 acre in a development. And the reason we use low density residential, and I remember when you spoke up during the master plan, is that most of this township still is ag, and quite frankly, and we've seen from previous meetings, they want to stay ag. and preserve open space, and we do too. I think the LDR land use designation in a master plan gets confusing for people because that's a land use designation that includes zoning districts within it. And in this case, in your case, you sort of have an idea that maybe you could try using one of the zoning districts to do it. But then, as Carol pointed out in her report, I mean, it's tough because it really doesn't fit either. So I encourage you to go back and continue to draw on this and explore the OSPDO as much as possible. And, you know, I've always encouraged the board to continue their work on that. So from my perspective, I have no problem tabling it because tonight what's in front of us is confusing a little bit because it you know, we're trying to shoehorn something into something that maybe it doesn't fit into. So I agree with you, but I'll open up. I don't know, Sandy, from your perspective, you obviously with the board, you've been working on OSPDO, and maybe you have any updates for us that don't go to those meetings.
So the, excuse me, the township board has engaged a planner who works with the open space that has that is set up similar to what Patrick is talking about, and they come in all different sizes. And the more the board thought about it, it just is so complicated. And it's like every time we turn a page or look around the corner, it's like, it's just so confusing. And we determined that we needed a professional to come and talk to us about it. And this person was recommended to us by the township attorney. And I don't know if she started working yet, but she will pretty soon. And we're really looking forward to what she has to say.
Okay.
Because none of us are planners.
Yeah, no, I get it. And Carol, I know you're there with Dawn. Is Mr. Thal, you know, in agreement here that he's had this conversation and thinks it'd be okay to table this, or have you talked to him? I know he's not here.
That kind of surprised me. We had no communication that Mr. Friedman talked with Mr. Thal.
I did talk with Mr. Thal, and it was his, I don't want to say recommendation, but he certainly thought that tabling it was a good idea in light of the planning aspect. Frankly, he was quite forthright that he thought that the planner may very well have some good information for the board, and that it might be productive to go ahead and table this tonight. He said he would not probably be participating. I think he's traveling. I think I spoke with him, I believe, on his cell phone. I think he's traveling. But he had a very pleasant conversation, and the conversation really was along the lines of, it's probably in everybody's best interest to table this tonight. And so here I am, and not trying to pull anything, just laying it out there for you.
Sure.
All right.
So, Dave, I will say that our communication with Rob Thal, he was rather surprised that Patrick had come in with a rezoning and not a conditional rezoning.
Yeah.
That was the last we spoke about this, was.
And
that
I'm sorry.
Rather surprised that we came in with just a straight up rezoning instead of.
Yeah. And
We did discuss too. That
okay,
came up.
yeah, that was my next question to you, Mr. Friedman. Yeah, because as I looked at this, that was one thing I saw happening tonight, right? Was if we wanted to, maybe the applicant could consider that too, because there are different options in that. So
That was just,
But it would be an application.
yeah, right.
One of the reasons why I was hesitant about the conditional rezoning is because I saw what happened with the towing impound yard earlier this year, and the conditional rezoning really didn't help them in any way, because it wasn't, I think the conditions were just not very attractive to the township, right? And if you know, if I were to attach conditions to this, I would want something that would actually be in line with what the township would like to see as conditions. If I can offer something that would be attractive, I think preservation of 50% of the land probably would be attractive, at least for this parcel.
Yeah, but I think just as a side note on the towing yard, I did think it helped. It just didn't get, it's almost like they gained 9 yards and they needed 10. right? So I think it helped. It just didn't get it over the line. But yeah, I understand. Board members, I don't know, Tom, did you want to say something?
I have no problem either, I just, if they would like to postpone it, I'm all in favor of postponing it and seeing what new light this gets shed on. Maybe we can go that route. I have no problem
Okay.
postponing it.
Helpful. Any other members, thoughts? Mike, Steve?
I have no problem with tabling it.
Dawn?
I am okay with tabling it. I just want to clarify though, are we tabling this and revisiting it? Or are we taking this off the table and there will be a new application coming forward?
Well, we could table it, and then if there's a new application, we can let it go, right, Carol? That's kind of what we did with the
Right.
last one, right?
You be, I know with the last one, because we published this as the public hearing portion of it, would be perhaps to consider comments. So if it's tabled and it comes back next month, the way it's set up currently, then you will have, I'm not renoticing another public hearing. This is the public hearing for this.
Yeah, I know. I still plan to do the public hearing and open it up, but then during planning commission discussion, I would table it. And then at that point, if you come in with a different request, then this just falls off, right?
I do have a concern about this, if I may. Somehow I would like to have the new application, if I submit it in the future, to be tied to this one in such a way that I don't incur a whole new set of fees again.
Patrick,
Especially if this is the public hearing for the potentially future application, right? Then it's in some sense one single application.
but that won't happen. This is identical to Pierce Road. So what they had to do is resubmit with a whole new public hearing, a whole new application. And it goes through the process all over. So it will be a whole new application, a whole new process, and I have to renotice it the same way I would did this one.
Yeah, because we can't, well, that was one of the legal questions we'd asked, is if we could shift gears and go from a rezoning request to a conditional, and we couldn't. We had to have a separate application.
Correct.
Okay, because the application is changing.
Correct.
Yeah.
I do believe that in the ordinance book, it says that the 125-day timeline for processing an application may be extended by mutual agreement of the planning commission or the board. I can't remember which, and the applicant. I think the planning commission, which would be a little bit different. That would be extending the timeline rather than canceling it.
But it's a different application, Patrick.
It would be if we came back with the conditional, yeah.
Yeah, is there, I mean, I'm trying to work with you, Patrick, because I understand. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we've already did the notices. We've already incurred the expense. So it's kind of like this hearing is this hearing. The next one has to be a new one. And I remember going through this with them too. So.
Well, I
Pretty-
imagine that the deposit would be refunded up to the amount that's been spent, right?
No.
To the time of the project being, it won't be as of today. Because if you table it, it still has activity going on with it.
It would be when you resubmit and we're going a different route.
But in any case, the $900 would be reassessed in its entirety. I think that's what I'm hearing.
What do you mean reassess?
The application fee.
Yes, you need a new application fee.
Hmm.
It would be, you're resubmitting a whole new project.
Yeah, because it would have to have engineering review and all the same things.
would I be right in presuming that there won't be a lot of activity on this after it's tabled?
There won't be any while it's tabled.
All right, so the $2,500 isn't going to be spent any further if it's tabled. That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah,
I mean, some of it's been spent, right? I mean,
Some of it's been spent. We're not going to do anything with it until you pick the ball back up and want to run down the field with it.
all right. So
If you
I'm,
don't pick the ball up, you pick up a different ball, then just pay for that ball.
yeah, and
You're gonna have double expense at some point because we did an
I-
engineering review
Yeah.
and we opened a hearing.
all right.
Make sense?
Yes, I think it does. In light of the fact that I would intend to come back with a different application. I think that's something that I can say that I would come back with a conditional application if I did. And
Yeah,
that would be well worth the additional money spent.
yeah, if you're fairly confident you would take that route, then
Yeah.
I would say table this. We all know the direction you're going. And we'll go from there.
Can I just clarify, table or take it off the table?
I think you table it because until he submits the next application, it's sitting there. And then that's what we did for Pierce Road, and I wouldn't do this any differently. And then when he does resubmit, then it kind of falls off.
So if Patrick does not bring back a conditional, but he wants to continue forward with this, how does that work? We
Then
just,
then we keep going, but we've already done a hearing. And he doesn't have to pay for another hearing.
But I would have to indicate in writing that I wanted to reactivate this, right?
Yeah, you have to let Carol know that.
Yeah.
Moving on the agenda.
If he decided to go in a different direction, he would simply withdraw this application.
Right. Well, while you think, Patrick, I'm going to go through what I need to do here, which is open a public hearing and take any public comment. And I said that I did get some public comment from Karen Fulhams, and I'm going to actually forward that to their secretary right now. But that is all I've got so far. So anyone else here tonight that would like to speak about this application? Wendy, you're first up.
Hi, it's really Dave, but I'll
Okay,
figure
Dave.
that out someday. As neighbors who are directly affected by whatever happens on Patrick's property, I would be in favor of this rezoning, but only because of the long drawn out process of the open space ordinance. Hopefully that gets really fresh eyes and approached with the intent of the law versus just following the letter of the law. And secondly, I like the conditional rezoning better than just a flat rezoning. It's a shame more money has to come from Patrick's pocket for that, but we definitely support this. I don't think impact as far as traffic is significant whatsoever. I know other things have been brought up about it's going to impact the school system. Not so. So I would just hope that if this continues, the Planning Commission looks at it realistically rather than just kind of making up reasons not to accept this. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You brought up-
My name's Jeff Reisner. I don't have a raise hand button on my screen
That's all
here,
right.
so
You
I
can
apologize.
you can just speak up. That's all you need to do. Go for it.
All right. So my name is Jeff Reisner. I live 2 parcels to the north of Patrick. And this is the first time that I've spoken in front of the board. I strongly oppose Patrick's idea for rezoning his property. He approached me before he bought his parcel and kind of was real vague on what his intent was. And I think it's kind of arrogant to buy a piece of property when he knew full well in mind, or what he had in mind for the property down the road. I think it's a little arrogant to, to purchase a piece of property and then persist in front of the board to get them to let him do what he wants to do. I'm all in favor of people doing what they would like to do with their own property. That's great, but this is my wife and I moved here from Ann Arbor in 2009, and we moved away from the hustle and bustle. I wanted to be in a rural community. I love it out here. It's agricultural, it's residential, and I strongly believe that's the way it should stay. If Patrick had an idea of some little co-op community or compound or neighborhood, I think he should have approached the board and, considered a piece of property, let his ideas be known before, purchase the property first and ask for forgiveness later. That's just, I've had people randomly walking around in my backyard without knocking on my door looking for livestock that got loose. A couple of years ago, he drilled a bunch of holes in some logs and planted some mushroom spores. Now my whole yard's filled up with mushrooms. I don't know how to get rid of them. I've never seen so many mushrooms. I don't have a problem with Patrick farming. That's great. I don't have if Patrick wanted to build a house and live in it, that's great. But to mix the two together, and it's just, I know there's a lot of new ideas now with green things and this, that, and the other. And, maybe in the future, that's going to catch on and be all over the place. But for this, the reason that I moved here, and I was surprised the speaker before me supported his plan. I don't quite understand the reasoning behind that, but the biggest thing that I can see is, I'm within sight of his property, and I'm very concerned about my property value going down. And then I have, there's one person that he's building a house between me and Patrick right now, and it's a nice brand new house he's building. And if I've talked to him a couple times, I would be concerned if I was him and losing value with it. I'm not trying to be mean or nasty, but I equate what Patrick's got going on over there is something that like you would walk into Harbor Freight and see. It's just kind of everything's in disarray. I've watched I've been able to observe the progress going on since he bought the property, and it's not I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't want to get nasty. So
That's okay.
anyways, I really strongly oppose what his plan is. You want to farm it? Great, farm it. You want to live there, build a house. So, but I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Christian Smith is the name up there. It doesn't mean that's Christian, but tell me who you are.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you.
Great. Yeah, I've been working with Patrick on the neighborhood project, but I've also, just as a reminder, been working with counties for about 5 years. I don't work with them anymore, but for about 5 years, I was program coordinator for natural land preservation and farmland preservation, so permanent preservation, like Patrick's considering. And I just wanted to assuage Jeff that when you're next to permanently protected land, your property values by and large go up. Many studies have shown that people like to be next to land that they know will be undeveloped in perpetuity, so that view shed can be protected. And I would love Jeff or anyone else to talk to us more about our plans, because we're always open to hearing neighbors' thoughts about what we're trying to do there. But I just wanted to also throw the 2 cents in there about the rezoning that, actually, let me dial back that the open space development option was an option when Patrick bought the property. So this integration of cluster development with agriculture was an option at that time, and it didn't have a minimum lot size. So the clusters could be as tight as possible. So the ordinance that being considered right now has an increase in lot size that would make it very difficult to cluster, and we'd be losing acres of farmland. So the rezoning request is in deference to preserving as much land as we can. And that conditional zoning will, ensure that as well. So just wanted to throw in a few different pieces of perspective there. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, that, and good to hear from you again. So thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Well, I'm waiting for a hand to go up just while I'm thinking about it, Patrick. I think what I'm hearing tonight actually sort of, the conditional rezoning is so much easier for us because it does focus it in on some of the things you want to do that are positive. And just like with Pierce Road, because with a zoning request, there's a whole litany of things we got to go through that have nothing to do with what you're doing, right? That could be done with that property. So, and I'm hearing that from folks commenting tonight too, that whether they oppose it or they're for it, a lot of it is that it has more to do with what you're doing there than the zoning itself. But anyway, before I get back to you for one last thing from you, is there anyone else in public comment? All right. Patrick, you can close out the public hearing.
Yeah, I want to say a few things in response to Jeff's comments. To the best of my recollection, the first time I met Jeff was on a day about 5 years ago when my sheep had gotten out and were running to his backyard, and we ran after the sheep to try to catch them. And I am sorry for what happened on that day. I don't think I met Jeff or any of the other neighbors before I bought the property. However, I don't believe I did. And I can tell you for sure that when I bought the property, I was not envisioning this development on it or anything close to it. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, except I know I wanted it to be agriculture in some way. I did not envision this community though. But it may seem like that because I have had the property for 6 years. It does seem like a long time ago. I don't believe that the mushrooms that we were inoculating could possibly be causing the mushroom problem in that lot at that distance, especially because these are mushrooms that we inoculate directly into oak logs. They don't really transmit very well by just spores through the air. But we've all had a lot of mushrooms this year because of the wet weather too. I can't say for sure, I guess. One thing that really hits me, and I think it goes back to what you said, Dave, is when you consider rezoning, you're considering the full range of things that could happen in that new zoning district, right? And it's easy for people to imagine bad things happening or things that are even worse than they're worried about right now. Certainly, I don't think anybody really wants homes, 1 acre lots spread all across the property, right? With homes. I think that's what a lot of people would envision. So maybe the conditional rezoning will at least demonstrate something better than that. I got to tell you guys, at a planning commission meeting 2 years ago, after the meeting, when I had a really rough time then, and that was also when the Finney project was being developed, right? There was a lot of hostility about both projects. We kind of got tied together unfairly, I think. But after the meeting, somebody pulled me aside and said, "You're having a rough time. Do you ever, do you know there's a lot of sand and gravel under your property? Do you ever think about taking some of that sand and gravel out?" And he seemed to be sincere. And I said, "Well, no, I never did. That's not at all what I want to do. But in the ag zoning district, mining is actually a special use that's listed there." You can imagine what some other prospective owner might do if I end up selling the land to somebody. I would never do that, right? But sometimes things have to be weighed versus what is the alternative? What would happen otherwise? It is entirely possible that the land would just stay in ag with one house on it forever. That's possible. I am actually building one house on there now, and I'm not sure if many of my neighbors can see it, but there is actually a house going up. But I don't think that realistically the land will stay 20 acres of pure ag forever without somebody developing it in some way, unless the land is protected. Just given the location of the land and the size of it. I do believe it would be better to have some kind of a compromise where some development has occurred, is allowed, and permanent preservation is also put in place for part of the land as kind of a middle ground between keeping it ag forever, which probably won't happen, and on the other hand, what nobody wants to happen is just have a whole big sea of houses out there. I don't think that any of my neighbors want the whole thing to just be developed into houses, but we can all see down the hill. I'm not sure if Jeff can see down the hill where he is at, but I can see down the hill from my property being on top of the hill. I can see Westchester Farms coming up, and that's what everybody's most afraid of, I think. Not to mention sand and gravel, but again, I would never do any of these things. I'm just saying. That's why I own the property, and I want to be a good steward of it.
I understand where you're.
And by the way, I have thought about it during this, and I am willing to agree to the tabling of this rezoning while we look at what happens to the open space ordinance and maybe consider putting in a conditional rezoning in the future. By far, the preference would be to have an open space ordinance that was just tweaked a little bit to be more effective. As Christian said, it's already on the books. It's been on the books. This is not a novel concept. It's not even something that the township ultimately can prevent because it's required by state law too. So why not at least make it effective so that you can actually use it? An ordinance on the books that's compliant with the letter of the state law, but through other interlocking ordinances not able to be used. It's not even clear to me that that's actually compliant anymore.
All right, I'm gonna play
Anyway, I'm
chairman
done. Thank you, though.
and limit the comments to the zoning request because that's the hearing. But thank you, Patrick, and I, just close the public hearing and just start with the chair's comments, which, I understand preservation of property. I mean, I'm doing the same with mine and building a home there and want to look at my land, nothing else. And, I get it. And, during the Finney debate, somehow that got turned on its head. People thought I was developing, but, my thing is, I'd love to see a way to preserve as much of that farmland for you as you can. And for your neighbors to be able to just see that farmland and not see gravel pits or development. So certainly understand where you're coming from, but also understand there's some difficulties given our current ordinances and all the things that need to be changed and all the things Sandy and her partners have to figure out too at the board level. But anyway, I will entertain the motion to table it. In fact, I'll make the motion, but before I do, is there any other comments from Planning Commission members? We did get a report from Sue, but I won't go into that. It was very short and it was very focused on this request. And if it comes back differently, I don't want to waste her time right now. So I think the staff report actually will speak well to whether we stay or whether we go to a conditional. So I think, Carol, a lot of your work was apropos, and I just want to say thank you because it was well done. It was thorough. And any other comments from Planning Commission members? Hearing none, I will make a motion to table the rezoning request for the property of 5601 Conway Road. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sandy. Hearing no further discussion, roll call. Tom,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Mike
Yes.
and Sandy.
Yes.
Motion is adopted and we have tabled it, and good luck to you, sir, and we'll see whether you come back next month. With that being said, I'm going to move on to communications, and actually related to, one of those is related to this. So the public hearing for the zoning map issue, we've been sort of putting that aside because it would be confusing to do that at the same time we did a rezoning request. So my best option, Carol, would be if Patrick's doesn't come back next month, but we don't really know that. So what else do we have on the docket that's waiting besides that?
Nothing right now, which is somewhat of a blessing because with November coming up, I would really have a hard time. I would almost have to get everything in next week
Yeah,
or because the next meeting is before Thanksgiving. So it's
Yep.
really difficult to try to get any public hearing notice out.
Should we then try to say December meeting for the zoning map?
Yes, and I will be working with Attorney Thal on that because it's one of the issues is he has requested all the legal descriptions for all those parcels. So I'll be working with the assessor, and I know she's up against the wire with working with Rod because tax notices are going to be going out. So it's always something, you know, so, but we'll do the best we can.
Right. Yeah, I just know we had that work group, and it's not fresh in the mind, but it's still in the mind. If we wait too long, we're but
Quickly, and it would come back to everybody on some of those issues. And it was primarily focused, it was just focused on the business park. Fact that it was adopted improperly. So I think when everybody revisits it, I'll be like, oh yeah, got it.
yeah, there was some improper things in the past that need to be fixed.
The other parcels, it's just focused on the business park district.
Yep. Okay. Supervisor Kennedy has requested a joint meeting with the board, planning commission, and zoning board of appeals. Any further information on, I understand why. You're here with us, Supervisor. But I assume enough people responded that we're going to have that meeting.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and I should send an email out about that, but I think we had a pretty good representation, especially from Planning Commission. So that would be fantastic if we could get together and have some sort of vision discussions and things that you would like to see the board prioritize in terms of ordinances or really anything, just an opportunity for us to come together as the budget year approaches so we can plan.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it'll be very helpful. I know in the past, we still have the private road issue. We still have a lot of other issues that impact a lot of these developments, things that come before us. So I think it's great to talk it out.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you there.
Dave, so I just, this is Carol. I just want to remind everybody, is Zoom, anybody that's on this meeting, that visioning session, that joint session is going to be Zoom.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
But are you gonna do your part from there in case Leah wants to come there?
I can.
I don't know.
I can.
Where yet.
Okay. No worries.
And I also want to mention, Dave, I'm sorry, real quick, if anybody can't attend, but they have any comments they would like to make, certainly email them to me or to Carol or to both of us, because we want to hear from everyone, even if you're not available that particular evening.
Okay, good. Good idea. Any other communication or comments, concerns from members? Anybody not available for the November meeting because we moved it up a week?
When is that again? 18th. The 18th. Okay.
Yeah, it's 18th, right?
Right. But I have nothing out. I have nothing in front of me. I have nothing presented to me right now.
Yeah. So it would be only if this, yeah. Okay.
Even if I got a new application in for the rezoning, conditional rezoning, I don't think I can make. I can't make, I was gonna say, November is the first is.
First is Monday.
Right, and so I would have to have, actually, I have to have the notice tomorrow so I can get it in. It can be published on Wednesday.
If I may, that's not going to happen. So yeah, I'm not going to make November under any circumstances. Yeah.
Well, for now, we will not plan on having to do anything in November, which would be nice. We could all spend the evening online shopping instead of, yeah. So, or for those of us hunters, maybe we could spend the evening hunting. So, any other comments, concerns, questions? All right. Well, then I think we can make a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Tom,
Second.
second by Steve. Roll call, Tom,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
chair votes yes, Mike
Yes, sir.
and Sandy.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Night all.
Good night.